All right, everyone. So looks like in the Discord, a couple of you are going pretty intense with these wake back to bed attempts. So that is awesome, wonderful. Um, there's a couple approaches, right, that we've discussed already. Last week we talked about the indirect method and direct methods. Direct method is when you have an OBE from falling asleep. Indirect is when you wake up from falling asleep and you lay there without moving and you have an OBE or you do a dream re-entry technique. So wake back to bed, you sleep for 5 or 4 hours, 5 or 4 hours. You wake up, you stay awake for 45 minutes, do some meditation, do some reading. Now your mind's a bit more alert, and then you go, you lay down and you put on hemisync, and you employ a direct method. There are these two approaches I've found to be the most effective. So, like William Bullman's advice is to try an OBE exit every time you fall asleep. So every time you take a nap, do wake back to bed as often as you can. Every time you go to sleep at the start of the night. So this is Bullman's idea, and if you do this 60 times or more than 60 times within a 2 month period, inevitably you will have an out of body experience. And once you have one, that the confidence of having one makes it a more regular and accessible phenomenon. The second approach that we're using is by another OBE expert, Michael Raduga, and he teaches indirect methods. So you can go and watch the videos and lectures from these guys and see what they have to say directly. Raduga's approach is to also do wake back to bed, but to do OBE from the reverse way. So indirect. Once you do an exit from waking up, it's the same. You're still in the out of body state. It's the same thing as if you had done it the direct way. The difference is that by using the indirect method, you already wake up in an altered state. If you wake up and you keep your eyes closed and you don't move, you're already in an altered state. So the idea is that you wake up already in non-physical or already in astral consciousness every morning, but because we immediately move the physical body, we break that trance and our consciousness fully transfers to physical waking reality. So uh, the like many things, people that teach a given subject are in disagreement about that given subject. So, Bullman says just go all out for 60 days and you'll definitely have one. Reality checks, everything, um, you know, to facilitate lucid dreaming. Raduga's view is that because failed attempts can lower your momentum or make you give up, only try them 2 or 3 times a week. So it really depends on your temperament and your disposition as a person. If failed attempts bother you, or if failed attempts are gonna kill your momentum or make you want to give up, then you can dial it back and just do indirect method. If you don't care and failed attempts don't bother you, then I recommend Bullman's approach of just doing as much as you can for 60 days, because that's exactly what I did when I was learning how to have OBEs. I just did it as much as I could consistently for 2 months, and after 30 days, I had a lucid dream. At around the 60-day mark, I had the vibrational state and the OBE exit. So that's a recap. Today we'll talk about the different kinds of OBEs. Like, we think generally there may be an idea that all OBEs are the same. They're not. A lot of OBEs don't even happen in the same non-physical body or non-physical vehicle. So let's explain. If you have an OBE or an exit and you're in this very heavy body and you feel stuck to the floor and you sink right down to the floor. You can't move and your perceptions aren't really all there. That's called generally an etheric projection. So you have your physical body, you have your energy body. Your energy body is called the etheric body. If you look at acupuncture meridians, that's the etheric body. It has all these meridian lines, the chakras, and everything. So the etheric body can actually make a temporary and short-lived projection out of the physical body. But because the etheric body is more like the physical body, it's a very dense energetic structure. So you end up just falling right to the floor or sinking right to the floor. You feel very sluggish, like you have these huge weights or like a huge weighted blanket on your non-physical body. That's all etheric body projection. So oftentimes when people have an out of body experience and they'll go into the etheric body and they'll say, hey, like, what's up with this? I thought I'd be able to fly. I thought I'd be able to like move through walls and do all kinds of wild stuff. All of that happens in the astral body, which is another non-physical vehicle. You have many non-physical bodies. So etheric projection, if you have an OBE and you experience this, like not being able to move um, with ease, feeling extremely heavy, sinking down into the floor, not being able to control the motor functions of the non-physical body, you can know that okay, I'm in an etheric projection. What will happen inevitably is that this because the density of this energy body is so close to the physical, you'll just be sucked back in after a few minutes or a couple minutes. Usually, etheric projections don't last very long because you can't get away. You can't get very far from the physical body, so you'll get snapped back. The astral body is the body that people refer to that is flying around and passing through walls and um, going to different dimensions. So, so just in case you have an OBE and you end up in this very sluggish body, you don't need to worry. It's common, especially during initial attempts, during initial exits. After the first few, this phenomena tends to stop, and you get the full transference of consciousness into the astral body. Um, when the vibrational state begins and you start to have these experiences, you'll notice that like a lot of it is not in your control. I mean, some of it is like actually completing the exit, engaging in motor functions. These are things that you're able to control with intention. But like initially, whether you end up in the etheric or whether you end up in the lighter non-physical astral body, it's not exactly something that you'll know how to navigate from the start. Like after you've experienced the etheric body and then you've experienced the astral body and you can feel the difference in their densities and the difference in their lightness, right? Like one is drastically heavier than the other. Knowing how each of them feel, you'd be able to phase from one to the other. If for whatever reason you ended up having an etheric projection and you weren't able to do the full astral transference. One of the ways to um, have the main approach for the indirect method, it's taught a couple different ways by Raduga and others. One is to, as soon as you wake up in the physical, or as soon as you wake up in the morning after having done wake back to bed, you don't move, and because you already wake up in the astral consciousness, you have to like catch that moment. If you've woken up and you're already moving, then you can try to relax and have an exit technique just like you're doing the direct method, but you've already missed the window. It doesn't mean you've killed the whole. It doesn't mean it's like irredeemable, but the window has been missed. So if you wake up and you're in paralysis, that's the window. You wake up and you're feeling that vibrational state phenomena. So James, the other night when you, or maybe it was last night when you were doing wake back to bed, and you started to experience this like movement and these vibrations or this subtle like floating. That's vibrational state phenomena. That is in the in between state. You can have an OBE from there. If you wake up past that point and you're already physically moving, the window for that phenomena, sleep paralysis, and thus an exit, you've already woken up past that point. So just do some more. Just do some more. Wake back to bed, or it'll just take a few more attempts until you actually like catch that window and you wake up before your body moves. You wake up in a kind of paralysis. So that's how that works. Once you wake up in the altered state, there's a couple things that are employed. One is you can just immediately do your exit technique or your dream reentry. So, for example, if you're going to do a shamanic dream or a lucid dream, you wake up in the in between, in the paralysis, and then immediately you employ the scene of the dream. You remember the scene of the dream or the person, the place from that dream, and you hold that in your mind's eye and you feel yourself there. You feel that you're there, and then your perceptions actually begin to generate there, and you appear in that reality. So the other approach that is taken is that once you wake up in paralysis, once you wake up in this in the altered state, you get out of bed and then you go and do something like look at a mirror in another room, and by doing that, you are able to make your perceptions clearer. You know, you look at the mirror, you feel the mirror, you focus on your hands, on moving your hands, and then your perceptions get clear, and then you can continue with your exit, or you can go wherever you want to go, or see whatever you want to see, do whatever you want to do. The idea of using like having a particular thing to do before you launch into the alternate reality is that sometimes when we have an OBE, our perceptions aren't very clear, and because they aren't clear, like our consciousness isn't very clear, you can have loss of consciousness and then forget the experience or not remember anything that happened after a given point. So that's common. Next week we'll get into how to extend, um, deepen and extend lucidity in the OBE. We've talked about it a couple times already, using specific commands, but also focusing on the astral perceptions, like the astral sensations, the feeling of the astral hands. All of these make your astral experience to the astral senses clearer. And with more clarity, you have more motor function and a greater capacity for navigation. In some OBEs, you'll find that you're not even embodied. You're like a formless consciousness. So, or you're a sphere of light or something like that. So these are uh, higher level projections. So with those non-physical bodies, or with these non-physical versions of yourself where you're like a sphere of light, for example, you're able to access the formless dimensions, or places, realms in the out of body experience that are very far removed from three-dimensional physical reality as we know it. So it means that the environment may be malleable, or I mean, I can describe one where as a kind of, it felt like a kind of in between dimension states, or like in between planes, like the walls or the environment in that place were a kind of like moving multicolored, I mean, almost kind of looked like lava, and the geometric forms in that place, they were uh, moving in this direction but somehow moving in this direction, and parts of the formations were moving in this direction but also in this direction simultaneously. So it was a very like strange oscillating structures, just stuff that we just don't see in this stable physical reality. So being an explorer, finding out what this whole reality system is about, you'll encounter things like this or planes like this that are just strange. Like, you may not have known that one of your on a particular plane of your consciousness that you are totally formless, that you don't actually have a body, um, that you're consciousness purely. So that's a very profound, that can cause a very profound shift in your thinking, because for most of our lives we're very identified with this physical body, and because 99% of our memories are physically embodied, a lot of our identification um, comes with this body. We really take it to be ourselves. And when you begin to have an OBE, or when you start having OBEs and you find that, like, not only are you not a physical body, but you're also an astral body. And then also, not only are you not an astral body, but you possess like a mental, non physical body, or mental, formless consciousness body. It changes the way that you interact, and it changes the view you have towards the physical and your uh, physical life, that you are more than your physical body. And because you are more than your physical body, you have these innate capacities for exploration and for um, just so much that is initially not known or accessible to our physical five senses. When you have a exit, what's classically described are tunnels. So if you look at a lot of the near-death literature, people describe tunnels, like they exit their body, some tunnel of light appears, and then they pass through the tunnel. And on the other side of the tunnel, they're greeted by departed relatives, or they're in some kind of heavenly like reality. This is often what's described. Tunnels are a common, I call them interdimensional transport systems. So there's ways that consciousness moves between planes, moves between dimensions, almost like if you were to look at layers of a cell membrane, and between these layers there's little transport systems for specific enzymes to pass through. They're little tunnels. So uh, tunnels in the out of body state are similar. Whenever you go through them, you appear somewhere else. Whenever you go through them, you enter another reality system or another dimension. But tunnels um, are not the only transit system. I've experienced probably like four or five different um, ways that consciousness moves between planes. So tunnels are one, but if you experience something else, you don't need to be alarmed that, like, oh, what is this? Everyone talks about tunnels. There's a lot. Yeah, there's just different ways for consciousness to move. It doesn't have to be a tunnel. One of the things that can happen, for example, um, is that your astral consciousness, or your consciousness in general, can be in one place, and then it disappears in one place and it reappears in another place. So that means uh, David David's consciousness disappears from his, it shuts off here, it vanishes here, and it appears in behind Esma's eyes. It's in Esma or in Ben. he disappears in one place and he appears in another place. And before he appears in the other place, there's actual uh, between dimension phenomena that occurs. It is really strange, strobing lights, unusual sounds, motions of the non-physical body, like contortions, and then you open your eyes and you're somewhere else. So the idea that an OBE is always like your spirit leaves, or your astral body leaves your physical body, and then it flies through this tunnel and appears somewhere else, like that is one form of OBE. That's not what happens all the time, or not what happens every time. And it's certainly not uh, just what happens. So if you take it from the model, or from the stance that everything is consciousness, right? Like this isn't an assertion that I make, but generally, if you have this view, or you have an experience of consciousness or an awakening, you have the view, you can have the view that everything is consciousness, or like everything is this infinite intelligence. That may be the case. Let's say you have this understanding, and if you had a direct experience with this, that means that your consciousness can appear anywhere and as anything. So it can appear as a space, like it can appear as a room somewhere else. It doesn't even have to be a formless consciousness in that room. It can actually appear as the room, as the environment itself. Really strange idea. It's happened to me. So you can appear as a particular environment. Having the understanding that consciousness can be anywhere, can appear anywhere, that takes your OBEs to a different level, in the sense that you don't have to rely on a particular exit, and like, you know, leaving your physical body and then looking back and seeing your physical body there and looking at your astral hands. Like, that's what we all do initially, but later this is not required. You could just enter the vibrational state, your consciousness turns off here, and it can appear somewhere else. It doesn't have to be um an embodied form that you, or like an embodied human like form that you inhabit after the exit. So consciousness being everywhere, right? We have, if we're having this, if we're talking about this from this frame, it can appear here, it can reappear here, it can disappear in this body, it can appear in another body, it can disappear from this reality, it can appear in another reality, it can appear as this reality, it can appear as that reality. They generally refer to this level of OBE as mental travel, or as projections at the causal level. So you have a variety of different planes, and some people say that, okay, that kind of OBE is a mental projection, or a causal projection, or a super causal projection. And really, there's no consensus on any of this, because it's not from an authoritative text or anything. It's just people's exploration and um, the maps and terminology that they use to explain their experiences. So the point of all this was to say and explain that an OBE doesn't have to be limited to our preconceived notions of it. So if our preconceived notion is that an OBE is only when you physically exit, you turn around and you look at your physical body, I'm telling you that's one form of OBE. There are different forms or different iterations, different configurations of the out of body experience. And it doesn't have to be limited to that, or limited to tunnels, or limited to human like departed relatives, or limited to human like heavenly dimensions, or limited to anything really that is within our human memory and our human framework. What I found in my out of body explorations is that the more I do this, or the more of them that I experience, the more non three-dimensional, non-human like that these experiences become. They have gradually become more removed from things that I am familiar with, and things that make sense and that I have encountered in my three-dimensional physical earth life. So one of the questions we might be considering is like, what do I do in an OBE? Like, let's say I have one, I actually complete an exit. What do I do? Like, what's the point? What can I do? What do I explore? And I think that once you have an OBE and you've uh, completed the exit, or even once you've entered, if you do it for dream reentry and you're in a lucid dream, I think it's very valuable to explore the inner or higher intelligence. So you can use the command higher self now and see what happens. I think this is really the point for OBEs, in my opinion. I mean, you can travel and you can do this and you can do that. You can see this and see that. And see if alien worlds really exist, see if angels really exist, see if demons really exist, see if non-physical masters or departed people really exist. You can go and see, do these things check out for you personally, and come to your own conclusions and verifications after repeated journeys and repeated experiences. But the main point is to get in touch with the guiding intelligence in your life and is directly accessible in the OBE. And you can do that by saying higher self now and just seeing what happens next. Higher self now. If it doesn't work, say it again. This is the thing, like, it's interesting. It's kind of like I don't know, I don't have a kid, so so maybe I'm incorrect on this, but like if you want to teach your kid persistence and they ask you for something, it may be appropriate to like um wait, or to make sure that they ask with enough want, that they're intentional enough about it and that they're clear that that's what they want, and then you give it to them. I find that this is actually the case in out of body experiences. You say higher self now, for some reason it doesn't work. You say it again, for some reason it doesn't work. You say it a third time, for some reason nothing happens. You're like, okay, whatever. You lose consciousness. You end up waking up in your bed and you go about your day. The next time you have an OBE, you try it again, bang, you get launched into some strange experience. Why didn't it work the first time? Why didn't it work when you said higher self now 3 times and nothing happened? Mystery of life. I don't have a complete answer on that. But my theory is that one, your other selves or your friends on the other side, they may just be waiting to see if you're serious enough. That's one idea that I have. And the other two is that it is possible that for whatever reason the OBE or consciousness needs to adjust. It needs to make its own configurations, and for whatever reason it just wasn't possible in that moment. But the next time you tried it, it worked, and it was a very, very profound thing that happens. So, like with anything that is new, don't don't stop just because it's not working. With meditation, with meditation, all of you we're doing a lot better than I was when I started. If you started your meditation practice and within your first month you had a few moments of peace, or you had a few moments of relaxation, a few moments of being settled and surrendered, that's far beyond what I was able to do when I was just starting my practice. For me, when I started meditation, I had very powerful spiritual experiences at the start. So like I did a 10-day Vipassana retreat. That's like 100 hours of meditation. So I had a very profound experience on that retreat. I had OBEs later. All right, I had OBEs like, I don't know, a month after that. So the beginning of my spiritual journey started with like a huge bang, you know, boom, like fireworks, as if like all the wars have just stopped. That's how in the world, and they're never gonna happen again. That's how I felt, with my initial spiritual adventure. It was just so amazing, the things that happened. And because they were so amazing and profound, I chased them for the next like 4 years, like, why can't I get back there? Like, how come I can't get my mind to be as powerful as it was on that retreat? And when you're doing spiritual work at that age in your early 20s, you're still growing up a lot, so you make a lot of dumb mistakes. Like someone tells you, hey, don't chase experiences, but you don't listen to them. Your teacher directly tells you, stop trying, or like, relax, dude. Like if you feel tension in your forehead, you're not only are you trying too hard, you're trying way too hard. If you have a headache for meditation, you're not just trying a little too hard. You're like really overdoing it. If you have a headache and you start to have tension headaches from concentration. No, incorrect. you are doing it wrong. I can't emphasize it more. Like when people say, "Oh, there's no right or wrong way to do it." Bullshit. There's absolutely a right and wrong way to do it. I'm telling you right now. The only people that say that are people that didn't do it wrong. But if you've done it wrong and you know you've done it wrong and you wasted years doing it wrong, you can definitely say, "Okay, heavy-handed, forced concentration to the point where my head hurts. That is not the way." I can say it definitively. It's unuseful, and I don't know. It could probably even be psychologically damaging. To have tension like that and to just like hold on. Oh yeah, if I can just hold on enough, I'll somehow break through to enlightenment. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't. You can't. It just doesn't happen. I've tried. Not only for 5 hours, hundreds of hours. I tried to practice like that. Hundreds, years. Okay, so I know that doesn't work. Let go, surrender. Um, Takes repeated attempts, but if you're persistent and if you follow the steps and if you give yourself time and if you're patient and if you're kind with self, it all happens in due time. It's all going according to plan in the sense that your consciousness has to adjust and it has to acclimate. Like some people think, for example, non-dual awakening, that like, and it does happen to some people. They have a very, very significant breakthrough or like a falling away of self, or they enter unity consciousness spontaneously. But these are always the exceptions. And of course, the exceptions tend to become famous people, famous teachers like Eckhart Tolle and people like that. But most of the people that I spoke with and that I've known, myself included, a lot of meditation was involved and like a lot of gradual change, gradual transformation, gradual thinning of the sense of self or the sense of me, gradual thinning of craving and striving and of holding on and of trying so hard and of wanting it so much. It's such, at least for me, it was such a huge energy. It was such a huge part of what I was that it couldn't possibly have just vanished all at once. Maybe someone with a smaller ego will have better odds, or the slice will just be more thorough, and the cut will be the one cut could be sufficient. But a lot of us are like that. A lot of us have a very strong sense of identity, a very strong belief system, a very strong framework that we interpret the world in. And it's really the essence of awakening to see the unreality of those structures, see the unreality or the illusory nature of this structure of me, these structures of belief and these particular frameworks that we all use to interpret life. The profound thing about spiritual exploration, and I think the most important thing about it, is that it gives you direct experience. For me, I have all kinds of experiences, but I still tend not to make definitive or conclusive statements. That's just what I've learned. And I've learned that because in OBEs, I found that there was a difference between the raw experience, there's a difference between what actually happened and my interpretation of what happened. So I'll explain. This is important because you can apply this to dreams and spiritual experiences in general, OBEs. I had an OBE where I was taken from the bed, went through some interdimensional transport thing, lights, flashing lights, 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 then appeared in a kind of dreamscape reality. That's at least how it felt. And I was walking down this street and there were these houses, and the houses had it's really weird. The above the doorknob were these little shelves, like a little, 2 inch by 4 inch shelf that would be sticking out from atop the knob, and then there would be a candle, and the candle was lit. I'm like, I don't know where the heck I am, but obviously, this isn't a thing where I'm from. No one puts, there's no candles on the top of doorknobs. And so I'm just walking, I'm walking, and the sense that like I'm not in an ordinary place keeps growing. And finally, there's this wall, and some non-physical being is there. I can't see the being, and the being starts to write the words on the wall, starts spelling them out. This invisible hand, blue death. I'm like, huh, it's really weird. And then as it says blue death, and then it says the voice says Bruce. I'm like, okay, all right. I don't know. That's really weird. My friend with that name is a doctor, and so when I woke up, the immediate thought that I had was, "Oh my God, something's gonna happen to me. I need to go see Bruce." I don't know what blue death means, but this person knows I Ching and all of this, so I'm gonna go see them, and yeah, I'm gonna figure this out. Maybe I'm getting a hint from the universe or from the higher intelligence that um, something's gonna happen to me, and that this is like a coded dream or coded out of body experience. So I go to this person like a couple days later, and I tell them, hey, I had this strange dream, and blue death, and said your name, so I thought I would come to you and get it checked out. So he felt my pulse. That's what they do in Chinese medicine. They feel your pulse and they do their whole diagnostic thing. And yeah, he was like, yeah, you're fine. You should. I don't know what that experience was. It may not mean anything. Go about your day. So a month later, he's in China, and this is just very only a very short period of time before the pandemic. And I get a text from like this group chat that him and all of his friends and associates are on, and he told them about this weird, or somehow this stuff about the OBE got around, and people were talking about it. They're like, yeah, he's actually in this very he's in this dire situation. He got some kind of respiratory infection in China or in Taiwan, but right now he's in China, and yeah, his breathing is severely arrested. He's in the hospital. Is really not looking good. And then they said, strangely enough, because his breathing is arrested and because of the respiratory infection, the doctor said that if the CO2 levels in his blood continue to rise, he will die of blue death. CO2 levels um, turn the appearance of the blood darker to blue. So I actually said the words, yeah, this continues, he'll die of blue death. And that spooked me and everyone out. So fortunately, he recovered and everything was okay. He's in the hospital for a month after that, but everything was fine afterwards. No like long-term lung problems. But this story illustrates the differences between the experience and the interpretation. The experience was this: there was a wall. A invisible being wrote these words on a wall and said a name. That's the experience. What that means, what that implies, uh, is interpretation. So the interpretation can be completely different from uh, what what is being conveyed, or you're like how you look at an experience or what you derive from an experience. Um, that's all interpretation and that's all thought. That can be on the mark or not. It's really difficult to determine that. At least in this situation, there was a physical event that actually occurred that made me conclude, hey, I was really wrong on this one. It didn't have anything to do with me. It actually had everything to do with him. It was one of those premonitions about uh, a dangerous event or a life changing event that is about to happen to a person. So, so I always distinguish between what I think something means and what happened. I don't put them in the same category, because if I do that, I can believe my interpretations, or I could believe my conclusions when they may not actually be the case. So until something corroborates, or until something is like self-verified by reality, oh, that may be the right angle of looking at things, I don't take my interpretations very seriously. Gives me a lot of room. I don't know, could be wrong on that one. I'm not sure what that experience actually means. I can just say that this is what happened. So um, having that range and having that freedom of not being so certain and not being so sure has been very helpful for me in my out of body experiences and in my spiritual growth in general. Because when I don't pinpoint things and say, yeah, that's for sure what it's all about, there's this there's this openness, in the sense that I'm not limiting reality, and I'm not limiting the spiritual explorations to my particular framework. So for me, I have a lot of experience with Buddhism, right? So you're like, if you're in the Buddhist reality tunnel, you eventually realize anatta. If you're in the Vedanta or outside Buddhist reality tunnels, you'll experience that. And um, to see it from the view that uh, you're dealing with reality tunnels, and you're dealing with uh, frameworks that are always built on experiences, but they're not the experiences themselves. Um, it just helps us not be so sure, and I think that is a very important thing for spiritual exploration, to like live as a question mark, to live as curiosity, because I think the moment that we're so certain about what it is that we're experiencing, or what it is that we're discovering or becoming, we can limit ourselves to that certainty. And that'd be a shame. What if there's something outside of it? This is why I have the view that's like, yeah, I mean, no self seems to be the case as far as I'm concerned. But there may actually be a true self, right? I'm not resistant or not open to that idea. So, okay, pausing now, or stopping the recording.